Our AI investments are redefining what's possible across every part of our business.
He may be right, and that may be the problem. In July 2026, Alphabet reported the strongest quarter in its history. Search was up 17%. Cloud was up 82%. The Gemini app had reached 950 million monthly users. Then the stock fell. Investors had seen another number. Alphabet now expected to spend between $205 billion during 2026. And underneath that number, the warning signs were already visible. Google's next flagship model had missed its launch window. The engineer it had spent $2.7 billion helping bring back in 2024 was leaving again. Search was learning to compare products, surface an offer, and complete a purchase without sending the user to a retailer's website at all. Google's AI might not fail. It might simply work exactly as designed. What if Google's best new product began consuming the system that made Google powerful in the first place? Forget how we got here. By July 2026, 3 companies were making 3 different moves. OpenAI was trying to become the first place people go for everything: search, work, shopping, increasingly health questions, until opening a traditional search bar felt like a step people skip. Anthropic had put its weight behind coding, enterprise systems, and professional workflows instead of chasing consumer attention. It needed to be the tool a company already trusted with its codebase, not another app on someone's phone. And Google didn't have to rely only on convincing people to choose Gemini over either of them. It was wiring Gemini into everything people already used. Don't search, ask. Don't ask, delegate. Don't choose, disappear into everything. None of the 3 could simply outbuild the other 2. By mid-2026, independent testing showed why. ChatGPT covered the widest range of tasks: images, voice, browsing, code, without leading in any single one of them. Claude was the one professional writers and developers reached for on long documents and large, tangled code bases. Gemini won on raw reasoning benchmarks and on searching across huge amounts of material at once, especially anywhere already tied to Google's own tools. OpenAI had the name people already said out loud. Anthropic had the trust of the people doing the most complicated work. Google had neither yet. It was fighting 2 separate wars for 2 separate audiences, against 2 separate companies at the same time. There's a real question hiding inside that third bet, and analysts were asking Google about it directly. If Gemini is everywhere, isn't it eating search from the inside? At the company's Q4 2025 earnings call, an analyst asked Pichai exactly that: whether growing use of the standalone Gemini app was cannibalizing traditional search.
We haven't seen any evidence of cannibalization there.
That answer was about one specific substitution: people using the Gemini app instead of typing into search. It said nothing about what happens to the website search used to send people to. That question gets its own answer later in this story. Google's own researchers had invented the transformer architecture powering the model families at the center of all 3 companies' strategies, back in 2017. 9 years later, the 2 companies built on that invention were hiring away the people Google needed to defend itself against them. As of July 2026, Google did not control all 3 fronts of this war. It was losing at least one of them. Start with the model itself. Gemini 3.5 Pro. The release Google's own CEO promised publicly in May 2026 missed its window. To understand why one delay mattered this much, go back 5 years, to one very expensive decision. Shazir had helped develop the Transformer, the architecture underneath virtually every major frontier language model today, including Gemini, Claude, and GPT. He'd left Google in 2021 when it wouldn't ship the chatbot he wanted to build, and co-founded his own company, Character.ai, instead. He returned in August 2024 through a $2.7 billion licensing agreement for Character.ai's technology, a deal so unusual the Department of Justice opened an antitrust review of it. Reporting at the time described Shazir's return as a central purpose of the deal. He came back as co-lead of Gemini itself. Sources close to the deal said Shazir personally profited hundreds of millions of dollars from the arrangement, an unusually large sum for a founder who never sold his company outright or took it public. Colleagues described him as blunt about why he'd left the first time. Google, in his view, had grown too cautious to ship what he built. Coming back on those terms was framed internally as proof the company had learned its lesson. Less than 2 years later, he decided it hadn't and left again. On June 18, 2026, he announced that he was leaving again, this time for OpenAI. Days later, John Jumper, a Nobel Prize winner and one of Google's own scientists, left for Anthropic instead. Alphabet lost roughly $225 billion in market value in the reaction that followed, as investors weighed a wider cluster of concerns: talent losses, model delays, and rising AI spending all at once. Employees, speaking anonymously, described low morale inside the lab building the next model.
Is that we have by far the biggest and broadest research bench of any of the labs out there, the leading labs out there.
The departures raised questions about Google's ability to retain senior researchers. Its user numbers, however, showed a different kind of strength. That same quarter, the Gemini app reached 950 million monthly active users. Separately, by July 2026, Google said AI overviews reached 2.5 billion monthly users, with AI mode alone surpassing 1 billion. Those numbers measure reach inside search, not how many people independently chose the Gemini app. Most of that additional reach never involved opening a standalone Gemini product at all. People searched Google the way they always had, and found a Gemini-powered answer already waiting inside it. That's not a fake number, it's a different number than it sounds like. The next example did not come from another language model. It came from Google's image editor, Nano Banana. While everyone was busy asking whether Gemini could catch ChatGPT, Google had already opened a second front. And there, the question wasn't whether Google was catching up, it was who was catching Google. Before August 2025, AI image editing had one persistent limit. Ask a model to change one detail in a picture, swap a jacket, fix a background, and it would usually regenerate the whole image from scratch. The face would shift, the composition would drift. Every edit was really a new picture wearing the old one's clothes. Then Google shipped a model with an almost joke of a name, Nano Banana. It could take a single image, make one targeted change, and preserve the subject's identity, composition, and surrounding details far more reliably than earlier models. For anyone building something that needed the same character or product across multiple shots, that mattered more than raw image quality. It surged to the top of independent image editing rankings almost overnight. One of the clearest examples was product photography. A seller who once needed 5 separate photo shoots to show one item in 5 settings could now shoot it once and generate the rest. Same shadows, same reflections, just relocated. The output read less like generated art and more like a second photo shoot nobody had to book. Google followed it with Nano Banana Pro, then Nano Banana 2, and built it into Search, Lens, Ads, and Google Cloud. In July 2026, Google tried that same instinct somewhere unexpected, wiring Nano Banana directly into Google Earth, letting anyone generate images grounded in real satellite data. It pulled the feature back within a day. After people used it to generate convincing fake versions of real places, Crea builds and sells its own rival image model, and still integrates Nano Banana, publishing its own comparisons against it. Higgsfield built entire production workflows on top of it. Magnific wired it straight into its own product. People can use Google's image models through all 3 platforms without ever opening the Gemini app at all. Even Google's competitors are, at the same time, distributing Google's technology to their own customers. The breakthrough wasn't just that Nano Banana topped a leaderboard. Crea, Higgsfield, and Magnific had turned a Google model into part of their own products. Google no longer needed users to open Gemini. Its distributors, including companies with rival models of their own, were already carrying it to them. In January 2026, Google showed what it wanted search to become: Picture the two sides of one transaction. Someone searches for a rug. AI mode compares options across Google's shopping graph, more than 50 billion listings, the way a knowledgeable friend would, not a search engine. If Google decides the shopper is close to buying, it can surface a direct offer, a retailer-funded discount, timed to the moment someone is deciding. Through a new standard called the Universal Commerce Protocol, the purchase can, in eligible cases, be completed right there, inside Google. Walmart, Target, and Shopify signed on as early partners. On the other side of that same transaction is the store that made the rug, or sourced it, or has sold it for 20 years. That store remains the merchant of record. It ships the product, handles the return, owns the risk. What it risks losing is more of the discovery and browsing environment in which it once had more control over a customer's attention. The store still knows who completed the purchase. What it may lose is the browsing journey that came before it. What else the customer considered, which pages changed their mind, and why they chose this product. For a small retailer, that gap isn't abstract. It's the difference between building a returning customer and fulfilling a single order handed to them by someone else's algorithm. Google used to monetize the road to a decision. You searched, you clicked, a retailer paid for having sent you there. The new arrangement lets it keep more of that road inside itself, in some cases, all the way through checkout. Google first previewed that world in May 2026. By late July, it had reached every paying Gemini subscriber. An autonomous agent that browses a retailer's site, compares options, and prepares a purchase on its own, pausing only for a human's final confirmation before money actually moves. The same logic spreads everywhere Google already sits. Gmail, Calendar, Maps, an ad business, a cloud full of custom chips, already connected, already installed on billions of devices. Neither OpenAI nor Anthropic owns that much of the road a decision travels down. The retailer still fulfills the order, handles the return, and carries the risk. But Google increasingly controls the moment the customer discovers, compares, and decides. It no longer owns only the road to the store. It is moving the decision inside itself. Claude competes directly against Gemini, but Anthropic also buys access to Google's TP-US, an October 2025 deal worth tens of billions of dollars, while spreading its infrastructure across Amazon, its primary partner since 2023, Microsoft, and Google. Alphabet holds a smaller equity stake in Anthropic too. It isn't control, and it isn't a guaranteed win. Cloud revenue isn't profit. An equity stake can lose value, and no single supplier can treat Anthropic's future demand as guaranteed. It is a hedge. Alphabet's investment books carried a separate twist. Most of the unusual gain came from its stake in SpaceX, not Anthropic. A different story entirely. But the open web is different. Google can invest in a competitor or sell it computing power. It cannot replace the independent work that competitors' models learn from. Google can hedge a model war. It cannot hedge the collapse of the thing feeding every model in it, including its own. Before a model can summarize something, somebody still has to do the original work. That leaves Google with a practical problem. Slow the AI answers down, and users drift back to ChatGPT and Claude. Speed them up, and Google risks dismantling the advertising engine that funds everything else it builds. Founded at the end of 2020, HouseFresh built its reputation the slow way. Its small team bought air purifiers with their own money, ran them for months in a dedicated test room, and published what they found. HouseFresh was not destroyed by AI mode. Its collapse began earlier, and that's exactly why its story matters. Between late 2023 and spring 2024, after Google's helpful content and core updates, the number of daily visitors HouseFresh received from Google Search fell from around 4,000 to roughly 200. The team said it kept testing products and improving the site, but its visibility remained at the mercy of Google's ranking systems. Google already controlled who the open web could reach before it ever started answering questions on the web's behalf. For HouseFresh, the decline had a direct cost. Founder Danny Ashton later said the collapse had taken such a severe financial and personal toll that HouseFresh was forced to let most of its staff go. The web seems to be getting claustrophobically smaller. Independent publishers, Navarro feared, would increasingly be forced to pay platforms just to reach an audience at all. She's not an isolated case. Pew Research tracked real browsing data across nearly 69,000 searches. When an AI summary appeared, people clicked a normal result 8% of the time. Without one, 15%. Reporting in mid-2026 found the same pattern across several major publishers. Steep declines that don't prove AI overviews caused all of it, but show the scale of what's happening. Google has its own answer to this, and it has a name.
Google's guidance in North Star has always been like focus on the user. So that's our biggest question at the heart is how do we make a great experience for users?
Reed has said the shift is about quality, not quantity. Both things can be true at once. Total search activity can keep climbing, while the odds of any single search producing a click keep falling. Google hasn't published the underlying dataset that would let anyone test that claim, and publishers couldn't simply opt out either until 2026. Leaving AI overviews meant disappearing from search entirely, since one crawler served both. Cloudflare's Matthew Prince has put a number on that imbalance. By his count, Google once sent roughly one visitor to a site for every 2 pages its crawler read there. By 2025, that ratio had stretched to 1 visitor for every 20 pages read.
The internet owes just an incredible debt to Google. For the last 27 years, Google has been the patron of the internet. They not only invented search.
First came the publishers. In September 2025, Penske Media, owner of Rolling Stone and Variety, sued Google in federal court over that same structure. Then came Europe and Britain. In December 2025, the European Commission opened a formal antitrust investigation. And by June 2026, the UK had forced Google to offer a separate opt-out for AI search, proof the existing choice had been judged inadequate. The US context mattered too. A federal court had already found that Google illegally protected its old search monopoly, the same monopoly regulators now worry is quietly reappearing inside the AI answers replacing the results it used to rank. Google used to rank pages and send people to them. AI search increasingly answers in their place. For users, that can be faster and more convenient. For publishers, it can mean fewer reasons to visit the original site. The problem may not show up immediately. A new product comes out. No one tests it. The measurements are never taken, and the article is never published. Google may still return an answer, but there is less original work behind it. This does not break search overnight. The next review, test, or investigation simply never appears. Search still works, it just has less to find.